first thing that I want to talk about is the @showChoice action tag. And this is similar to the hide choice that has existed for a while. It just does the opposite. So let me go into the designer here and just show you. With the hide choice, that allows you to, as it says, hide choices. So if you have, we use this a lot for drop downs and things where somebody has a value that is no longer applicable, or they just want to, it's deprecated, they just want to get rid of it, but they need to keep it in order to, because there's other data, there are other records that might have this value, and you don't want to go deleting values in your drop downs once you started using it, because that just deletes the data. There's no link anymore to that value in the database. So you just hide the choice. The opposite is show choice. So instead of saying like I have, let's say I have 10 choices and 5 of them I need to hide, instead of doing the hide choice, you could just say, I want to show these choices. And so one of the examples that I'll show you here is for like informed consents, where you're having to constantly update a value. And instead of having to do hide choice where you have 20 old consents and you have to keep adding to that action tag, you would just say, okay, I added 2 new consents. I'm just going to have those visible. So in some ways, it's a little easier to just have your show choice, because you're actively saying, I want these values to be displayed, as opposed to having to keep in mind which values I don't want to keep having displayed. So this is the action tag here, the show choice, and it only works for obviously anything that has a choice, checkbox, radio, buttons, drop-down lists, yes, no, or true, false. It doesn't work for notes fields or text fields, and it doesn't work in the matrix. So if you have a matrix of fields, you can't do show choice, because the way the matrix is designed, it shows all your choices by default. And if you can use this in conjunction with the hide choice, but it will take precedence over the hide choice. So if you accidentally have the same value in show choice and you say, I want to hide it, it's going to show it. So you guys can read this in the action tag if you want more information, but I'm just going to show you real quick how this works. So I have an example project here that shows, this is from a real life project that I work on, where we have multiple consent versions that get updated from time to time, and we only want the most current consents. And the way I used to do it is in the hide choice. And I'm going to show you, this one should say show choice. I'm going to show you the difference between the hide choice and the show choice, and then an additional thing that we can do with the show choice. So let me just click in here, and this is, so you can see all of the options that we have here. And what I would do is select, whenever I would have to update a version, I would just, whenever I would add the new ones and deprecate the old ones, I would just put the old values in here. And so I would just hide them, but that requires me to keep track of everything that I'm hiding. So this can get quite long. Actually, the project that I'm using has about 3 times as many consents as this, and I pared it down just for this example. So having to keep track of all these that you're hiding can be a bit cumbersome. So it's, in a way, it's better to use the show choice for this sort of example, because instead of hiding everything, all I'm doing is I'm just updating this value. So I only want to show the most current English consent and the most current Spanish consent. So that just saves me from all the hassle. I don't have to keep track of any other values. I just have to make sure that these are the new ones that I added, and then I just update these values here. And it's really simple. Similar to the hide choice, you just say show choice equals, and then whatever your values are, or one value. If you have one value, as long as it's within single quotes or double quotes, But if you have multiple values, you want to separate them by a comma. So it's pretty simple if you're familiar with action tags. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you here, and let's go to the record. So I just have, let's go to the consent here. And you can see that in this record, I'm only showing the most current English and Spanish version, and show choice is showing the exact same thing. So I'm just, this one is the hide choice values, and this one is show choice, and this is doing the exact same thing. Now, this third one here is a little more complex because what I'm doing and what I do in this other project, which is really nice now that we have the show choice, is I can show choices based on a smart variable. So if we go back to the record here, you'll see that I have these events set up. So that way, if I want, and because what I do is that in the project I manage is I create an event for that specific consent. And then when a new consent comes out, I create a new event for that consent. And this allows us to keep track of the people who were consented on this version and this version and this version and this version, because we just keep adding events. But whenever I add a new event, I don't want the person to be able to enter. I don't want them to be able to select an older version and vice versa. I don't want somebody to go into the older event and be able to select a newer version and overwrite that. So a way to kind of lock that in is to use the show choice action tag in conjunction with the event ID. So if we go to the project setup here, and I'm just opening up this in a new tab. Oh, wrong one here. I want the events. So what I'm using is this event ID for each of these events. Let me make this a little bigger. So I'm using this event ID. You can use the event name. There's a smart variable for that, but I find it's easier to use the event ID because that's shorter to type. But you can see here, this event dash name is the smart variable you would use for this. And if you want the event number or the event label, those are smart variables as well. I just like the event ID. So what I'm doing is in this event, and let me just, there we go, this is fine. What I'm doing is I'm saying for this event 79992, which is the 01-10-24 event, I only want to show the English and Spanish versions for those. If I'm on the event for 10-20-23, I only want to show the values for those. And so it's locking me into two versions, English and Spanish, for that event. So I don't have to have complex branching logic or things like that, or have multiple, we've done that before, where we have multiple fields that show or hide that have different values. So that way you can select, you're limited to two. This way you can just limit it by the event IDs. And these are nested. They don't look like they're nested, but you have to remember when you use the if action tag, you have a statement that says your conditional statement. And then you have if that conditional statement is true, and then you have if that conditional statement is false. So here I'm saying if this event ID equals this, then I want to set this action tag. And then if it's false, I'm actually nesting it to this one. So then I'm saying within that false statement, I want to check if this is true. And if it's true, then I want to do this. And I'm nesting it all the way down. So if you look at the last one here, this is saying if this is true, then I want this. But if it's false, then I want this. I just want an empty string. I don't want to assign any action tags to this. And then a good way to check this is to make sure you have enough parentheses to close these, so you can see how this works its way up. So that way I'm on the end of this. That's a good way to check. So I'm just setting these for each event. So let's go and look at how that displays. So if we go into the 01-10, you can see down here that I have 01-10. These stay the same because that's hard coded in the fields. If I go to the 10-20, you can see this changes, but these are the same because I'm only hiding the choices or showing the choices, and that's going across all events. I'm not doing any event filtering. So this is what that field would look like regardless of the event. Then if I go to 722, we have the same thing. And so it filters out for each one. If I go to 719 here, you can see here I only have these options. And the nice thing about this is that if somebody had to go back, they're limited to this. So it's not, they wouldn't have an older record that has a newer consent. You're kind of locking yourself in for that. And it just kind of helps keep everything in order. The other thing we can do with the action tag and the smart variables is we can hide choices based on usernames or data access groups and things like that. So if we go to the design here, I just have an example where like if we have an issue tracker, these are the statuses. And let's say Terry, being the boss here, can only be the one to assign the fixed value. We can all like assign a status for these issues, but Terry's the one that says that it's got his final seal of approval. So we can set this where if his username is tsmith6, it shows all the choices. And if it's not, then it just shows the choices minus the first one. And this would be an example where the hide choice would probably make more sense, because you would just say, I want to hide this first choice. And if not, I don't want to do anything. And this would be like the negative. So if the user, any other user but Terry, I want to hide choice 1, but if not, I just want to have that visible. So if we go to the form here, and obviously I'm not Terry, so my username value is different. So whenever, and that shouldn't show up. It wasn't showing up before. It shouldn't show up if it's Terry or if it's not Terry. So I'm not sure why that's not working right there. It was working when I demoed it earlier. Oh, that's because I'm in the design view. Never mind. So here we go. I was going crazy. So now it doesn't show the fixed value on either of these, but if I did go back and change one of these to mine. See, I usually keep my design on the left here. That's what throws me. So now it would say fixed. And then this one obviously still doesn't say fixed.
But that's a good point to bring up, that design view shows everything. It's only when you're actually running it.
Right. Yeah. It's always good to test these out, especially in different cases. And leading to that, one of the problems with this module, and we had the same problem with the hide choice, but I felt it's good to mention, is that these don't update on the fly. They only update when the form is loaded. So with the consent versions, those dropdowns get pared down when the form is loaded, or whenever we have the issue status. That's because it's getting the value before the form is loaded. So in this example, I have the option of selecting a color, warm or cool. And ideally what I would like is if I select warm, it filters out the warm colors, and cool will filter out the cool colors. But if I select warm, nothing happens. If I select cool, nothing happens. And in the designer, so I just have a nested if statement here. I'm saying if choice is 1, which is warm, I just want 1, 2, or 3. If choice is cool, then I want 4, 5, 6, or 7. So it's not working here because there's nothing firing on the form when this gets selected. But if I click save and stay and it reloads, now it's going to have that value. And now it's going to filter. So if I select cool, but if I use the same action tag and I have it set up on a separate form here, this is identical to that other field, and you can see that here. If I have that set, so I have this set to cool, and I go to the separate form here, it loads automatically as being filtered. So I really wish they would set up a way to have these things sort of toggle a refresh somehow. So just keep that in mind when you're using it, especially if you're testing it. I was kind of pulling my hair on this because I I use it in one of my other projects, and when I was doing this to set the demo, I was trying to just the simple, just very simple show choice, and it wasn't working. And then I remembered, just like the hide choice, it doesn't work when when the fields are on the same form. You have to have them on separate forms, or you have to set the values when you load the form. I hope that makes sense. Like, I think this one would work. For example, if we set this to warm or cool when it loads, I think it would work. So if we do, we'll just leave that as blank. And if we go here to, and let's just set this as a default. You can do default or set value. I think this would work because you're setting the value as it loads. We'll try it out. If default works. Let's try set value. Oh, you know what? Default's not going to work because default only sets, you got to remember this, default only sets when the form loads the first time. But if you save the record, default doesn't work. Set value sets the value every time you open the form, regardless. So that's a good thing to remember. So yeah, now we have this as 1, but this isn't filtering. And if we do save and save, then it should probably filter. Yeah.